This has been something that I've been working on for well over a year with the planning and execution and everything. I'm really excited to have this exhibition here at the Mariners Museum. It's a perfect location for this work, and I'm excited beyond belief at the way this show looks. The way this project came about really is quite interesting. It goes all the way back to 2002, and a random happenstance while I was working in Chesapeake, Virginia on the street doing another project called A Random Portrait of Virginia. A man walked by named Alfredo Lima who was working on a fishing trawler nearby. And I just loved his white boots. I mean, I was a sucker for his boots. And right in that one instant, in my head popped out there to do a portrait project of Watermen. And July of 2009, we started on Endangered Island, and the rest is history. We worked all the way up till this June of 2010, and the results are on the wall. Finding where to do the photography was one of the more interesting challenges. I had to rely on a lot of people. I'm not really a waterman or a waterman type, as you can tell. So via email and phone calls, I made connections with people up and down the Chesapeake, and certain people actually volunteered to help me. We shot from Shadyside, Maryland, up south of Annapolis, all the way down to Hampton. There were 19 total locations, including the Eastern Shore of Virginia, Tangier Island, Saxis Island, Newport News, Urbana. Before I started the project and talking to the people that volunteered to help me, everyone conveyed to me how sort of closed the Waterman community was and is, and how I might have trouble, sort of penetrating the kind of the wall they put up. These are very independent people. They don't like a lot of regulations. They don't like people kind of nosing around. So I had to kind of gain their trust. And luckily, through the people that volunteered to help me and who would make connections before we showed up, we kind of broke down those walls. So it was quite interesting, and I found these people very easy to work with, very knowledgeable, very friendly, and they actually wanted to help. They wanted to get the story out about what they do and their struggles, what they go through. So it was quite, it was a thrill actually to work with these folks. It was so different than what I do in my normal daily photography. People ask me, who is your favorite person you photographed, or what was the most memorable moment in the project? There were so many, it's really hard to say, but I like to tell this story, and it involves the very first person that I photographed, Freddie Wheatley on Tangier Island. We walked up a long kind of gangway towards where Freddie was sitting in his boat. Unfortunately, we didn't realize Freddie's engine had just died, and he was there working on his engine. So he had oil all over him, and here we come trudging up, all excited, this is gonna be the first person. And I've got on my New York Yankee baseball hat. I look down at Freddie, and Freddie's got on a Boston Red Sox hat. So Freddie looks at me and he goes, "Well, I was thinking about doing this till I saw that hat." Well, I reached up, took my baseball hat, turned it around backwards, said, "What a hat." And Freddie was just the greatest, and it's one of actually the favorite photographs in the whole show. When you work with people like this and you hear the stories about how hard they work and how independent the Watermen are, and you kind of go, yeah, But then when you're out there watching these folks and seeing what they do and the weather they go, work in, and it seemed like every time we showed up somewhere, especially in the summer, it was 100 degrees, the hottest day of the year. They're out there working. They go to work at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. when the rest of us are, still slumbering away. And these people are just so independent. I didn't realize, I kind of thought about it, but they have to do it all. They have to worry about their boat engines, the tides, the weather, the waves. So much goes into their job, and you just think, well, they go put out a bunch of crab pots and lift them up, and how hard is that besides heavy lifting? Well, there's so much more. I had no clue, and I've certainly learned a lot about it. One thing about these photos that I try to do, and it's really my style of work, I'm what some would call a straight photographer, kind of a documentary photographer, portrait photographer. And one of my favorite photographers of all time was a man named Paul Strand. And I've learned so much from Paul Strand. One thing Paul did was pull out little details about his subjects, things that most people wouldn't notice, and it's something I try to do. Maybe a piece of texture on the wall behind the person, maybe a frayed shirt collar. I work like crazy to try to pull out these details, And so it's many hours after the photo is made that I'm working in Photoshop on my computer and printing a photo and reprinting the photo and trying to make it things that most people wouldn't notice. I'm trying to make sure that they're visible when you walk up and see this photo on the wall. This project would not be possible without my wife, Marshall McClure. Marshall went with me to every location, all 19, and Marshall did all the interviews that you will see beside each portrait on the wall and in the book. Many times we'd show up at a location and we'd see someone and I'd go, I want to photograph that guy, and I would go up and talk to him. And he'd go, I don't think you can get my picture today. I'd go over to Marshall and I'd say, Marshall, go talk to that guy. And usually without fail, about 5 minutes later, the guy would walk up and he'd go, well, where do you want me to stand? I think I'll do it. So Marshall was totally instrumental. She had a great way of interviewing the folks, getting out little details that she asked questions that I wouldn't even have thought of. And then when you see the catalog, I hope you really enjoy it, because Marshall designed the catalog, laid it out, and took care of all that. So without Marshall, I'd be totally lost. As far as the actual photography goes with this project, all the photographs are made digitally with a high-end digital camera. They're all printed digitally, inkjet, in my studio, except for the really giant photos that were jobbed out. I spend many, many hours working on these photos, each one, trying to pull out little details. So it's not just, pushing the button and out comes the print. When we're on location, I used an electronic strobe to light each person. And if you notice, there's more light on one side of the face than the other, and that comes from my light. We were working in extreme conditions, usually at 12 noon, which is usually the worst time to try to do a portrait of someone because the sun's so high and you get horrible shadows. So I knew ahead of time sort of how I wanted to light these, and I was really happy with the way they came out.